I'm Adam Walker, a biometrics consultant, and this is the Pharma Prescribed podcast, where leaders, innovators, and hidden voices in healthcare open up. No sound bites, no spin, just raw insight, one prescription at a time. In an industry driven by data, protocols, and pressure, we rarely pause to ask the human questions. What drives us? What breaks us? And what truths live behind the titles we wear? Nuria Coll Bastus is an industry disruptor whose roots in academic research and onco-genomics have blossomed into a bold new vision for clinical trials. Born in Spain and now based in the UK, Nuria brings a cross-cultural lens to one of pharma's most persistent challenges, patient recruitment. With over 12 years in drug development and a background in onco-genomics, ClinicalNet is a health tech startup she founded to match patients with trials in under 5 minutes. Globally, 80% of clinical trials are delayed due to recruitment issues, costing billions annually. Nuria's platform is challenging that, automating access, centralizing data, and empowering both patients and practitioners. Nuria, great to see you today. Welcome to Pharma Prescribed.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
So for our listeners, perhaps you could give us a little bit of background as to how you got into the industry and a little bit more about ClinicalNet.
Yes, so my background is in science, and as you explained, I did my bachelor degree in chemistry in Barcelona. Then I did a couple of masters, one in organic chemistry, and then I switched to cancer therapeutics. I wanted to have more background on biotechnology, which was my passion. After that, I had the opportunity to do a PhD in onco-genomics here in London at Barts Cancer Institute. And I have to say that I love it. I love all the experience of research and learning about cancer and its causes. But eventually I made the decision to move into industry, to work in pharma and biotech. I work in a range of different organizations, from small to big, lead pharmacy in the industry. And it's where I came across the problem that ClinicalNet is trying to solve. Because I was working in pharma and my family and friends knew about it, every time that they had somebody in their network that had been diagnosed with in this case, a cancer that was not treatable, they will reach out to me asking, since you work in pharma, do you know of any clinical trial? Because the doctor told us that there is nothing to do. And the reality was that 60% surveys say that 60% of the people will consider clinical trial in these situations, but only 8% end up entering clinical trials. And at the same time, I was working in pharma, and we were struggling to recruit enough participants. And that is a big, huge problem, as you said. 80% of the trials experience delays, costing billions of dollars or pounds, not only on cost, but also opportunity loss, because it eats from the pattern. So I was wondering why there is this disconnect, why there are patients looking for trials, and why there are trials that do not have enough patients. So back then I was doing an MBA on my free time, and I put this as a case study. So I started doing all the surveys and interviews with oncologists, patients, patient organizations, my colleagues working in pharma, to try to understand why this is happening and which will be the ideal solution. And based on that, I design these ideal solutions, which maybe we can talk about it later. And because I did quite a lot of noise with these surveys, an angel investor in London came my way and offered me to put some money towards building this ideal solution. So he convinced me to leave my job in pharma to try to do this possible. And this is how everything started.
Amazing. How long ago was that when this angel investor approached you with this idea?
That was in 2021. I remember it was a spring. He actually asked me to meet, and I say a couple of times no. Eventually I meet him, and he made the offer at the beginning of summer. I took the full summer to think about it. And in September 2021, I accepted. It's when I gave my notice to the company I was working, and 3 months later is when I could dedicate full time to start working on it.
Okay, so you happened to drop in passing that you just had some spare time and you were doing an MBA. That sounds like quite a heavy lift in itself. During that MBA, clearly you were focusing some attention around this particular problem. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, I spent many years in academia doing degrees, masters, and a PhD. But and I felt I had an expertise in science and research, but I did not know much about business. And as a curious person, I wanted to understand more of that. So I was young and I had plenty of energy, and my natural curiosity made me want to do an MBA, and for that I had to do a dissertation, a thesis. So I put that as the topic because was the biggest, again, one of the biggest problems in pharma that I saw or experienced firsthand. And I also thought, because the people that were reaching out to me asking for trials were people that are close to me, I could see their suffering and how much hope they were looking for. And it's there. The trials are there, are free, are safe, and many other people will benefit from that as much as trials will benefit from having the data from the patients. So I thought that it's a problem that has to be solved, and it could have so much value into society: faster approvals of drugs, more treatments, more innovative treatments accessible right now, not 10 years down the line. So I thought if there was a way to do it, it was worth exploring it. So that motivation kept me spending my evenings and weekends working on it.
You've mentioned a number of aspects of interest there for me, particularly referencing how difficult it is for patients to find clinical trials. Is the barrier to entry the knowledge? Is it knowing where to go to find those groundbreaking opportunities to connect with specific oncology trials? What is that barrier for patients?
So is having a place where they can go and find the information in a way that is digestible. So all clinical trial information or the enough clinical trial information to know that whether there are trials or not available for you or for your patients if you are the doctor or the nurse is there, is out there. But it's in a structure and in a format that is not digestible to find, not even for people that speak the medical language, but also for patients. They do not understand some of the terminology. There are a smaller database that some patient organizations or other companies put together. They clean it, they structure it, they make it a bit more digestible. But they tend to miss quite a lot of the trials. So what it ends up happening is when patients or try to look for trials, they have to navigate through different sites. And one of the things that I checked during my MBA was how people behave. And it was surprising, or one of the interesting things to see is that when people look for information, only 20% of them will look, 100% will go and look for that information, and only 20% of them will try and look for a second place. So they give up if they don't find the information straight away because of time, because of brain capacity, or because they also are, if they are patients, they are going through quite a lot of emotional burden. So they don't tend to spend hours looking for it. They give up easily if they don't find a source that they can use.
So is your goal to give simplified information to the patients as much as to give a breadth of understanding to the medical community as well, to share with their patients? Is it somewhere between that sweet spot?
Yes, so we want a platform where anybody can go there and within a short period of time, an average 5 minutes, they can find the most suitable trial for them or their families or their patients, regardless of who they are. So it's a platform that should be a hub, a global point of information from clinical trials that is in lay language as well as medical language. And it's structured in a way that it's very simple to use. And within 5 minutes, basically you find the information for patients and their families, because it should be easy and don't add to the burden they are going through already. And for healthcare professionals like doctors and nurses, because they are already overworked and they don't have much more than 5 minutes to look for this information.
As you were describing that, I was thinking about the technology that must be behind and under the hood of this technology itself. And having worked and developed various platforms myself and supported companies that have done so, who are the kind of people that you're working with? Are you a software developer? I don't think you are, but do you work with software developers? How did this creation come to bear?
So yes, I'm not a software developer. We have a team. So this is a very good question. So when I started, I thought this is simple, right? We have the clinical trial information is available publicly. We have amazing AI in the last few years. The only thing you need to do is to take all that information, plug it through AI, structure it, and that's it. Why this doesn't exist is so simple, right? I talked to every single company that back then was supporting patient recruitment, and none of them were doing what we are doing. Once I start working on it and I put together the team of developers, I understood why it didn't exist. It's incredibly difficult. So I gave the problem to 3 different teams, one in India, one in the US, one in London. None of them could manage to do it. And when I say teams, I mean AI experts. And the reason for that is because even today, AI is fantastic. LLMs are great, but they're not able to process that huge amount of information. We have 65,000 clinical trials open for recruitment. And what we had to do, what I did back then is I did a 6-week course. I was not on AI. I did not pretend or expect to become an expert, but I wanted to understand the limitations of what we can get with AI. When I had that knowledge, like basic what you can do with the different types of AI, I come up with a model of how we can break down the clinical trial information so we can process it sequentially through different types of AI. In that way, so breaking it up from a medical perspective, this is why the AI teams were not able to do it, because they did not have the medical or experience in clinical trials. So you needed somebody that understands what matters and what don't matter from a clinical trial information point of view. So when we come up with this model, the only instructions for them was, okay, for each of these steps, use this type of AI to do this, to structure it in this way. And that is basically the way that we managed to do it.
Again, following on from that point, I'm thinking about medical dictionaries, unstructured data sets from all over the place, from hospitals, from clinicaltrials.gov, various other platforms, presumably all being filtered through into ClinicalNet. Is that essentially what you've managed to do to simplify that into a funnel?
Yes, so we are getting the information from primary registries, but as many people know, that information comes very unstructured. It's written by people working in pharma in different ways. So, for example, one of the exclusion criteria of a trial could be not being pregnant. And another trial will say exactly the same, but in other words, like having a negative HCC test. It's completely worse. You cannot use NLPs. Yes, you can use LLMs, but when you are extrapolating to 65,000 clinical trials, basically it will start hallucinating, and obviously the cost will be unbearable if you have to do that for every single patient in that you support. Also, we have all the trials or conditions, so the amount of people or users that we have will make that completely unfeasible from a business perspective. So yes, we are extracting that information and then we structure it in-house.
Thank you for sharing that and explaining that a little bit more. I can understand why that is a very heavy lift and why you might need many different teams. So you've overcome that and you now have a working model, and patients and medical doctors are able to access that information in one central place. Is it a subscription model? How does it work? How could I access it, for example, on behalf of friends, family, loved ones?
So the only thing you need to do is to go to the site. So it's a URL. It's trials.clinicalnet.com. If you arrive to our website instead, clinicalnet.com, there are plenty of links everywhere to go to the platform. Anybody can use it for free. You don't even need to register. You can start playing with it. At some stage, after using it for a little bit, it's gonna ask you if you want to sign up. You can reject it. You don't need to. It's not mandatory. But we encourage people to sign up just because if we have their information, if there are new trials, we update the platform, we update the data, the trials every 24 hours. So it could be that if today you don't find a trial, it could be tomorrow or next week, there will be a trial that suits you. So if you register, apart from having additional features, which is saving to your favorites, we can also let you know if there is any new trial that you may want to consider. But it's, as I said, it's free for everybody to use. You don't even need to register if you don't want. Just bear in mind of that pop-up. And then for those that do find a trial, they are matched to a trial, and they want to go ahead and learn more, receive information from the trial team, or involve their doctors if it's the patient or the family is doing it, then we ask them obviously to register, because we have to send that communication with the contact details. So that, but again, it's at no cost for anybody. So one of the things that is very clear, that I made very clear to everybody working in the company and to our investors, is this is a platform that should be always free for patients, charities, doctors, and for academic trials. So, there are trials that are run by academic institutions, university hospitals, for example, and others that are run by profit organizations like pharmaceuticals and biotechs. I work in academia, I work in hospitals, I work in the Imperial Trials Unit before I moved to industry, and I work in pharma and biotech. And I've been family members of patients that needed trials. I know who has the money. I know which are the burden for everybody. NHS is a stretch here in the UK. In any other healthcare system in any country is the same. And so our paying customers are pharma, so as private organizations trials. At the same time, we know that this is going to work only if everybody have access, including all pharma and biotech. So we don't want financials or cost to be a restriction for pharma. So what we did is we create a model where we can offer the platform in a subscription that is less than 10% the cost of any other recruitment organization out there. The reasons why we are able to do that is because everything is automated. As again, when I was doing the MBA, I talked to every single recruitment agency in the US and in the UK. When I was shocked about the prices, but they were justified. They had an army of 100 PhD educated people doing the search of patients or do the matching manually. We don't have that cost. We don't need to charge $500,000 or $1 million to support the recruitment of a trial, because it's done automatically. And because of that, we can go to pharma and ask for a license that it's completely affordable for them.
It's so thought-provoking that you've given so much thought to the people that need access, namely the patients, the families, and the caregivers. And the model centers around pharma companies and biotechs paying for that service. During your investigations, I'm assuming you identified not only was there a gap, but actually there was an opportunity here, because it's one thing identifying a gap, it's quite another turning that into a financial opportunity that will also support healthcare. And there are many companies that are in the dust that we speak of in the past that weren't able to overcome that costing model whereby it was actually sustainable. Is this model sustainable? If so, how?
Yes, it is. But again, it will only work if everybody's using it, because if we do have all pharmas supporting us to receive patients, but patients do not use it, that's not going to solve the problem. If we have millions of patients using us, but pharma is not supporting us, is not using us, then we will not be able to connect them to their trials. So we have three main users. Whoever is looking for the trial, let's call it patient or their medical team, the trial teams that are receiving those patients, and then what we call a sponsor, which is basically the owners of the trials, which are pharma and biotech. So the three of them are linked to the platform, and all of them have to be using it to work, to basically be able to connect with each other. So this is why the start is going to be always difficult. It's like going to be like a snowball. It's going to be small at the beginning, and the more people use it, the more everybody else will come.
So I'm going to put my Dragon's Den hat on now and ask you, at what point, if you're making money at the moment, is this sustainable as a business? Is ClinicalNet a sustainable business yet? have you repaid some of the money from that angel investor?
So it's very early days. So the challenge of creating the platform and structuring the data was big enough to take us 3 years to produce a scalable platform. So the first year and a half, we managed to have to structure all oncology trials, but it was not scalable to everything else. So it took us in total 3 years to build the platform. Now we are starting to raise awareness. So we recently brought into the team our marketing director, our sales lead, and we are now starting to raise some awareness, meaning that we have already some pharmaceutical signing agreements with us and revenues coming, but it's not covering yet the cost, particularly because we want to keep incorporating new features into the platform to give even a better user experience. So cost of development are still significant. So we expect to start being profitable with the current model within 9 to 12 months from now.
I didn't mean to ask that from a point of discomfort, Nuria. It was really from the point of view of just understanding where the business is, because as I said, having been in and around startup world, I know these things take a long time. There's a lot of effort that goes into that heavy lift at the beginning, and many companies don't get beyond that 3 years of development. They go to the wall because they've run out of money. There's no more runway that they can build upon. So I'm delighted to hear that you're in that next phase. You're recruiting people that are now pushing out that message into the public domain, because quite clearly there is a requirement for this. You've done a lot of work, a lot of understanding around the key points that you're trying to overcome there. So really congratulations on that particular point, and I'm delighted to hear that. So you talked about personal connection with this. Are you happy to elaborate a little bit more around that and your own personal story that really drove you? Because it's one thing having a startup, it's another having an angel investor, and it's another to take that forward. But there has to be something more that drives you. I'm guessing there's something more that's driving you.
Yes, and I think I alluded a little bit when I explained how I arrived here. I saw how much hope having one more treatment option give to certain families and patients, and clinical trials give that. In regards to my personal stories, I remember two of them on top of my head. The first one was when I was still working in pharma. This former colleague of mine from another company reached out to me saying that her husband was recently diagnosed with metastatic esophageal, I'm not going to be able to say it, but basically a type of gastric cancer. And the doctor said there was some radiotherapy they could do, but nothing else. And so she was desperate to look for innovative treatments in clinical trials. She said she was spending every day 3-6 hours looking for clinical trials, but she didn't know the language. Even though she was work with me, she worked in the IT team. So she was actually educating herself on medical terminology to look for trials. And at some point she gave up and reached out to me. But then I looked for trials online on primary registries. It took me 6 hours to come out with the list for her husband. And I was used to navigate through clinical trials. I was using those sites every day for my job. So I was thinking, how the hell will anybody do that? First, the time, and second, the knowledge. And when I gave her the list and they went through the appointments with the doctors, she told me how important just having that hope, how much that meant for them, just knowing that they will maybe have the opportunity to spend one more Christmas together or one more anniversary together. So that was something that really made me realize how is people doing it, why they don't have the same opportunity. And the other example was when my mother was diagnosed with metastatic melanoma. I took her to one of the best private oncologists in Barcelona, in Spain. And by the time that we arrived to that appointment, I already had the search. I already knew which clinical trials she could go, because I was aware that there were some treatments that were approved in the UK that were very good for melanoma, but were not yet approved in Spain for her particular case. So another way to receive this kind of treatments is to go into clinical trials. So there were 2 trials ongoing in Barcelona. And when we arrived to the appointment, one of the final questions was, is there any trial? I mean, my mother cannot access this treatment, it's not available in Spain. Can she go to a trial? And the response of this renamed oncologist was, don't know of any that is going around. So when I presented, there are these 2 running in the nearby hospitals, she said, this is very useful. I have a few other patients that may also be eligible. So thank you so much for pointing this out. And these are people that are on the top of their careers and yet do not have the time to look for all this information. It's like, and not because they're not interested or they don't care, it's just they don't have the time or the capacity. So at the end, that made me realize it's the job of the family and the patients to take care of your own health. You might be very lucky you end up going to a doctor that just happens to have heard about the trial, or themselves they run a trial, but that is a postcode lottery, right? So this is why it was very important to create something that gave power to patients, because doctors and nurses could do it, but also if the patients that they have the time and the incentive more than the healthcare providers, they can go to their appointments and say, I saw this trial, should we consider it? The platform does that, does not only matches with a clinical trial, but also connects you with your medical team, so they send the trial link, and also allows the medical team to do a proper referral to the medical team of the patient to do a proper referral into the trial team. So we basically simplify the full process. And then at that step, ClinicalNet steps back. Once they get in touch, whatever happens from there in terms of sharing information or doing all the steps to get formally inside the platform, their trial is obviously up to them.
That is an amazing insight, and thank you for sharing both of those, because I think not only will that resonate with our audience, but also it resonates with me as a caregiver and someone who's been around family members also who've needed care at various points in their life. And I think that's really where you've hit the nail on the head there. It's that personal accountability and being able to do something, as you say. If the medical doctor that sat in front of you in a specialist room doesn't have awareness or visibility of these things, then what hope? What hope is there for patients and caregivers? It's remarkable. That's a really phenomenal insight that you shared there. Moving forward, when people are using this tool and it is having an influence over people's care pathways, are you seeing those stories already? Because it really does remind me so much of my experiences in rare disease as well. It seems like there's like an overlay between finding trials, finding medications, and connecting the dots in between.
Yes. So we already had cases where we had patients entering these treatments at clinical trials, and their family come back to us. Not everybody does come back to us because, as I said, once we put them in touch, we don't follow them. But some of them come back to us expressing how grateful they are that we exist and how much hope we gave to those families. And until now, I've been talking about those that exhausted all the resources and then they go into trials because they don't know where else to go. But my vision is not to use clinical trials as a last resource, because some of them will be on for patients that are just diagnosed now that if they receive another treatment, they may not become eligible. So the idea is whenever you are diagnosed with something, clinical trials should be one more treatment option on the table. You can choose whether to use them or not to use them, but should be from day one. These are all the treatments that are approved. These are all the treatments that are in clinical trials, which is the best sequence that we can use to optimize all the treatment options. Because if you start with one and that kills 3 options down the line, that will probably affect your overall outcome. So the idea is to simplify it so much, and we are working into incorporating a new feature where doctors, when they have the patient records in their laptops or in their computers, they have also already the shortlisted list of trials that they may be eligible. And this is automatic every 24 hours. So maybe if your patient doesn't want to go to a trial today, but in 6 months relapse from a previous treatment, will be a new set of trials that will be available if they want to do that. So that is our vision.
I love that. That's brilliant. As you were talking, I wrote down a little question which I wanted to ask you around health outcomes. And it's a more general point that has come up in other conversations I've had with other guests on the podcast. It's around how everyone can take ownership for their own healthcare. I'm curious to know what your feelings, what your thoughts are around that as well, because it shouldn't just be the case that we seek help when things are going wrong for us, when we have an out of range result from our medical report, or we have some bloods taken out of the blue. What can people do to secure their health outcomes and be more proactive about that?
So there are research studies and publications that show that actually people that are proactive and taking care of their health tend to have earlier diagnosis, which obviously affect the treatment options, which obviously affect the prognosis and the outcome of their treatments. So I always say to everybody that is close to me that they should be a bit more active, not just relying on the programs from the government to screen every X number of years for certain things, but if they have the capacity to maybe do additional tests every year, every 2 years, whatever it takes, whatever makes sense, right? Even if it's privately. I know not everybody will have the financials, but at the same time I said, okay, most people go out for dinner once a week and they spend 50, 100 pounds. Maybe you can skip 3 weekends a year and maybe pay for a test that it will be maybe identifying if you have any problem 2 years before the NHS will be able to do it. So for me, it's always, if you can keep reading and learning about your body, about your health, like almost basic knowledge on this sector, that will basically probably make a huge difference on you also, not only on how on the diagnosis and the outcome of your diseases, but also it'll educate you to have a healthier life that will make you feel better. And so that also is related to quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, I entirely agree with that. I think quality of life measures, they're often there in clinical trial methodologies. Again, it's much further down the line, isn't it? It's when they're receiving treatment that patients answer quality of life measures generally. I wonder whether or not ClinicalNet could be implemented on an NHS app or, whatever equivalent across Europe and the globe as a front point to just remind people of what's out there, even in a healthy state. I think that's the key, isn't it? We hope for health, but unfortunately, with age comes comorbidities and things that happen to us, some of which are genetic, which we've touched on with your background, but also some of which are environmental. There are many environmental factors these days that are influencing people's health, well-being, and health outcomes, aren't there?
Definitely, absolutely. And in regards to your point about being implemented through the NHS app, we are open to that. We are talking with the NIHR, which also are involved with providing information about clinical trials to the general population. They did say they really like our platform, but obviously these things take time and it needs alignment. And also we are at the end of the day a private organization. So there is also some things to polish down this line, but we are very open to provide our services to everybody, and going through organizations like the NHS definitely will be something that will help raise awareness to everybody.
I'm really glad you said that, because it was at the forefront of my mind as he was describing how people are made aware of it. And I think the greatest awareness you can have is just to be reminded all the time, isn't it? Whether it's on the Underground, London Underground, or wherever you are, buses, there's pop-ups all over the place on every platform that we're looking on in the palm of our hands these days. So I'm sure you're doing all sorts of very clever marketing on various different social media platforms, are you?
We are doing, obviously, we are still a small, and marketing is costly. So we are doing as much as we can. And the money that we're raising from investors is mostly dedicated to marketing, to raise awareness.
I hope that we can get some of those messages out for you from the podcast as well. So at this point in the conversation, I always like to move to a quick fire round and talk a little bit more about the person behind the person that presents. So I wonder, Nuria, what is the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
I start things younger in the sense that sometimes I hesitated a lot of times to start doing things for fear, for fear for failure, fear of finances, etc. So, but at the same time, I'm very glad that I made that step to eventually try this for many things. First, because we give hope to people. We have the opportunity to improve healthcare and general health in people, but also because I learn a lot and I give a little bit more sense of purpose of why we are working, right? Why we are making an effort. So I will say, don't be scared and do it sooner.
Thank you for sharing that. I often say, and I've heard it said, failure is data acquisition. So I come back to that point, without failure, we don't learn anything, do we? Definitely, I agree with that. What are the top 3 qualities you value most when building a team?
Motivation, not for money, but motivation for making a difference. Honesty and openness to share when things are going right, but also when things are going well. And positivity, looking always at solutions rather than at problems. I remember when I was doing my degree in chemistry, one of the professors told us there are 2 types of people in this planet, those that create problems and the ones that solve problems. Which one do you want to be? So, yeah.
I can clearly see which one you are in that, by the way. Thank you for that. And what is your favorite thing outside of work?
Sport. And I sometimes miss having the time to do sport outside.
Any particular sports?
I like any of them, but I have to say I'm not very good with the ones that involve arms, like tennis or basketball. But still, for example, I try to spend some time playing paddle tennis, which is a easy version of tennis. But yeah, I would say any type of sport.
Fabulous. And finally, what is your number 1 golden rule in life and in business?
Don't give up.
I'm sensing you're not someone that gives up very easily, being that solution-led person that you are, Nuria. This has been a wonderful conversation. I think we've covered all manner of different aspects of your motivation, your drive, the success, and the future plans for ClinicalNet. I really do wish you very well for that. I'd like to thank you for your time today, but also, if there are listeners out there who'd like to make contact with you, Nuria, what's the best way of making contact?
The best way probably is to go to the contact us section where they can write us. And I believe also there is the main contact email address, so they can also use that.
Very good. And as I say, it's been a wonderful conversation today. I wanted to thank you for taking the time, Nuria, to come on to Pharma Prescribe today. And thank you for sharing the story of ClinicalNet. It's been an absolute delight to get to know you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks.